says, thank you for your video on sexual misconduct allegations. My reaction when I hear news of teachers accused of such misconduct is not one of judgment or lack of compassion, but rather one of great discouragement. If someone born into this tradition who has spent their whole life practicing and teaching cannot keep basic ethics that even the average person in the street can manage, what does that say about the effectiveness of the path as a whole? Almost a sense of, am I just deluding myself that I'm going to get anywhere with this? I've got no realizations whatsoever, but I can avoid sexually molesting people. What good are realizations if they don't even make one a better, kinder person on the relative level? If our teachers can't even avoid breaking the law, then what's the point of this practice? How does one keep one's faith through all of this? So, before I answer the question, just to say, when we talk about those two very important mental factors, integrity and consideration for others, the one of consideration for others is seeing that our behavior can adversely affect somebody else's faith in the Dharma. And so refraining from negative actions based on that reason. So here is an excellent example of how somebody's faith in the Dharma has been, damaged by somebody else's behavior. So that's one point. Second point is, I think in all fairness, we need to have an impartial, independent investigation before we conclude everything, okay? So I'm talking with that in mind, yeah. I don't want to jump to any conclusions before there's been an appropriate investigation, because that's just not fair to anybody. But still, this person's question is a good one, yeah. And it's a challenging one to answer, And I think the question about what good is realizations if it can't make you a better person on the conventional level is a really good question, And that's why I think that it's so important to build our practice starting at the foundation with ethical conduct, developing love and compassion, keeping good ethical conduct, then advancing to the bodhisattva practice, then going to the tantra practice, and so on, but really building a very strong foundation. Otherwise, you can have all sorts of fancy meditative experiences, but if you can't be a nice guy in dealing with other people, then this is what you wind up with. People say, what's the use of the spiritual practice? So that's one point. Another point is we don't really know who has realizations and who doesn't. Yeah. His Holiness has spoken before that just because somebody's called a Rinpoche doesn't mean they're a bodhisattva, doesn't mean that they have realizations. In fact, he's quite animate, and I've heard him say this many times, is that being a Rinpoche nowadays is a social status, and that these people need to live up to the good deeds of their previous incarnations and not just rely on the title Rinpoche, which is a social status, he says. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Yeah, don't always expect people who have titles to be high practitioners. We don't know that. Okay. Also, And again, I remember reading this. I wish I could find this book. It was somebody's PhD thesis. It was written way back because I read it in the 80s, where somebody did their thesis on tulkus, and His Holiness wrote the introduction, and he was saying, some tulkus, or some people are recognized as tulkus because they have the positive karma to be recognized. But it doesn't mean they have realizations. It just means they have the karma to be recognized. Okay, so again, not to expect, perfection out of people. Yeah. But then there's the basic question, which she asked, is somebody was born into this tradition, was ordained when they were young, has been practicing a long time. So what's up? Okay. So another thing I think, and I'm not using this as an excuse, but just as something to remember, is that Rinpoche didn't leave Tibet until he was an adult. So he grew up in Tibet during the time of the Cultural Revolution, during the time when the monasteries were demolished. So he did not grow up in, with his teacher in a community, in a monastery, with the whole education when he was real little. I think a lot of that didn't happen until later, but I don't know his whole biography in detail. But it's just something. Do you know? Yeah. So, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay. Now, all of that aside, the question still comes: how can somebody, even if you didn't learn the Dharma until you're an adult, how can somebody do that? That question is a mystery. I will not try and explain somebody else's behavior. Many people ask me, how come so and so did this? How come so and so said that? I cannot speak for anybody else. Okay, so I won't even try. But what I will share is how I deal with this question. Okay, because that I can speak from personal experience. Somebody else's, their level of realization, their motivation, I can't tell. But when I hear of things like this, like I was saying the other day, it's always a big warning to me of how careful I need to become. So I don't take it in the sense of this means the path is useless, because I've checked out the path, the Dharma path, and it's incredible. It's amazing. When you study the texts, when you read about the Bodhisattva practice and the Bodhisattva path, I can't think of anything better to do with my life. So just because somebody else can't keep good ethical conduct or doesn't mean that the path doesn't work. It means that person has some kind of obstacle. That person who knows what their karma was from before, who knows what their previous habits were before. I can't explain that for somebody else. Yeah. But that's not really the point. The point is that when you, at least for me, when I look at the path, I can't think of anything better to do with my life. If I say this path doesn't work, it's like saying, well, ethical conduct is baloney and love and compassion are baloney. So what use is it training my mind in ethical conduct? What use is it training my mind in compassion? So then I won't tell anybody else to keep ethical conduct. I won't tell anybody else to train their mind in compassion, because I'll think that it doesn't work. Now, where does that get me on a personal level, and where does that get the world? Yeah, it's not going to make me any happier. It's not going to make me a better person. It's definitely going to harm the world if I talk like that. Yeah, even though I'm just one small person. Yeah. So in my mind, losing faith is not an option. Yeah, because the path is so wonderful. And there's a lot of people who practice it well and have attained results. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing is I can see from my own experience that when I practice, even the little bit I know, it helps me. Okay, there's no doubt about that. If you people had known me before, actually, Venerable Sankhya Kadro can tell you a little bit about that. But I think I have to bribe her with some chocolate so she doesn't. She can tell you stories about me. And I think, have I improved? Yeah, I think I'm a little bit better than I was before. I think, the Dharma path has helped me. So I know that from my own experience. Yeah. And I trust the path. And so one person's bad behavior isn't going to derail that because I don't understand their bad behavior and I can't think of, a reason to explain it. So I just leave that aside. If I have to mind my business, not everybody else's business. Okay? And I have to worry about the state of my mind, not somebody else's mind. Okay? So for me, I mean, what could I think of that's better in my life to do than following the Dharma path, even though it's hard, even though it takes 3 countless great eons, even though there's institutional degeneration. The path is pure. The human beings who follow it, the religious institution formed by human beings, my refuge isn't in that. Yeah, my refuge is in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. I think that's something very, very important to remember, where our refuge is in. Okay? How can my refuge be in somebody else's behavior? Yeah. I don't want any of you to take refuge in my behavior. I don't have perfect behavior. I think you know that already. But you're still around. You haven't lost faith, even though I don't have perfect behavior. So what else is there? Okay, so this person's saying, am I just deluding myself that I'm going to get anywhere with this? No, you aren't. If you put in effort, results will come. You have to learn the path, learn the teachings, think about them, put them into practice, meditate on them. And if you do all of this with a correct understanding of the Dharma, for sure you will change. Anyway, we're changing all the time because we're constantly impermanent on the subtle level. So since there's subtle impermanence and we're not remaining the same for even the next moment, if we can help ourselves change for the better, why not do it? Okay, so that's a good reason for training the mind in these virtuous ideas. And even if nobody else in the world does it, it doesn't matter. We have to see for ourselves what is worthwhile doing in life. So when she says, I have no realizations and I can avoid sexually molesting people, that's good. You have some basic ethical conduct. I rejoice. Yeah, build on that. Yeah, build on what you're capable of doing. See the areas where maybe you aren't as strong, where you need to really work. Yeah, because we all have different areas where our ethical conduct is stronger and where it's weaker. Yeah, so for one person, abandoning, unwise and unkind sexual misconduct might be easy. But stopping lying, stopping harsh talk may be very difficult. Yeah. For somebody else, stopping lying might be easy, but stopping gossip or stopping unwise sexual behavior may be difficult. Okay. So the thing is, start where we're at, work with the areas that cause us the greatest problem, and rejoice at what we are capable of doing and the good karma that we do create from our ethical conduct. And then just keep working at it, building on it, strengthen your love and compassion. See how it helps you be happier, how it helps you treat other people better. Yeah. Ask the people around you if they've noticed a change in you since you've practiced the Dharma. Then you'll see if the path works or not. Yeah. I've heard one man who used to come to the retreats a lot. His daughter, well, no, his wife told me, and his daughter, that when he comes back from retreats, he's so nice and he's so easy to get along with. So the family, and your family knows you quite well, so they see the change. Yeah. Sometimes the children see the change. Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh has this thing that, where you ring the mindfulness bell and everybody stops and breathes. And so I've heard stories of when the parents start going at it with each other, the child rings the mindfulness bell, and mom and dad settle down, and then the kids can see, oh, this works. Yeah, mom and dad become nicer people when they just even do a simple practice of stopping and coming back to their breath. Okay. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to this?
I read an article about sexual misconduct by Catholic priests, which of course is very distressing. But one thing that I noticed was somebody had done research and concluded that only 4% of priests actually behave this way. And of course, that's a lot. If there's a million priests, that's a lot of priests. But on the other hand, it's kind of ignoring the 96% who do not behave this way. Mm-hmm. That said, these figures are actually consistent with people in society as well, men in society. Usually it's only 4% who commit sexual misconduct. We don't have figures for Buddhist clergy, but we can assume it's probably like that as well. So I think it's good to focus on all the people who are not behaving this way instead of focusing on the ones who are behaving this way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point.
It seems like the title Rinpoche, people have these really high expectations, like they're bodhisattvas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they're not human anymore. And I just wonder how to get rid of that idea, but not damage the credibility of the religious institution, but kind of ground it a little bit, because I think, well, to me, it seems that Rinpoches are almost worshipped.
Yeah, and they are, by many people, but also the Tibetans are much more practical about how they relate to Rinpoches. They respect them, they give them a lot of offerings, but they will also point out when they don't behave so well. Yeah, whereas Westerners, we often, because we don't grow up in the culture, then Tibetan culture in general is fantasized as being Shangri-La. Everybody is perfect. These definitely are holy beings. So we impute things on to them that perhaps aren't there. In the same way that we impute expectations onto movie stars and sports heroes, and then those people don't live up to our expectations. But, the whole thing is, what are we projecting? What are we expecting out of other people? And maybe we need to put our feet on the ground a little bit. Yeah. His Holiness also says that we should choose teachers not by their titles, but according to the descriptions in the text. In Maitreya in Sutra Alamkara gives 10 qualities of a fully qualified Mahayana teacher. The Vinaya gives the qualities of a Vinaya teacher. He says, learn those qualities and then look and see if somebody has those qualities before they become your teacher. Very much we have to use our wisdom. So this requires a lot of education in the West, I think. Yeah. And so we have to really emphasize that education. Okay.